Jeremiah Cole's diner was only days away from being seized. The bills had stacked so high they could crush a man's spirit, and the neighbors, they laughed behind his back, calling him a fool. Still, Jeremiah kept doing the one thing that put him here in the first place, feeding every stranger who walked through his door, and on one stormy night, with nothing left but a single plate of food, Jeremiah slid it across the counter to a trembling homeless man. People whispered that kindness was the reason he was broke, but they had no idea who that man really was. Because when the officers finally came to shut Jeremiah down, a convoy of black SUVs rolled up outside. And the same man, everyone thought, was a nobody stepped out, dressed in a suit so sharp the entire street went silent. Before we dive deeper, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us. It helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Now, let's begin. Jeremiah Cole's diner looked like a place time had forgotten. A chipped neon sign buzzed weakly above the door, flickering against the steady drizzle that had soaked the streets all day. Inside, the smell of fried onions and burnt coffee clung to the air, tangled with the dampness that sneaked in every time the door swung open. The booths sat empty, cracked red vinyl a few, crumbs from the morning rush, and the low hum of an ancient refrigerator filling the silence. Behind the counter, Jeremiah stood with slumped shoulders, wiping the same spot over and over with a rag so faded it was nearly grey. He wasn't cleaning anymore. He was thinking, distracting himself from the stack of unopened bills in the drawer he hadn't dared touch in 2 days. People said he was too generous for his own good, and maybe they were right. Because every evening, someone hungry would wander in, an old woman with shaking hands, kids with hollow eyes, men whose shoes had split at the seams. Jeremiah never turned them away. He'd slide a plate across the counter, no questions asked. "If I can cook, they can eat," he always muttered under his breath. That night the bell over the door jingled softly. A figure stepped inside, thin, soaked through, his coat clinging to him like a second skin. His beard was patchy, his eyes hollow, his hands trembling as if the cold had carved itself into his bones. Jeremiah didn't hesitate. He pointed to a booth. "Sit down, brother. You're freezing." The man shuffled forward without a word. He smelled of rainwater and exhaustion, the kind that came from too many nights on concrete sidewalks. Jeremiah poured a mug of steaming coffee, set down a bowl of chicken soup, and even slid over a couple of painkillers from the jar he kept behind. The counter. From the corner booth, 2 locals whispered just loud enough. "See, that's why he's broke," one muttered. The other snorted. "He'll lose this place before winter's done." Jeremiah's jaw tightened. He caught their reflection in the chrome of the coffee machine but didn't turn around. What was the point? Let them think he was a fool. Instead, he focused on the stranger. The man sipped slowly, his gaze locked on Jeremiah, not just watching him, but studying him. Every small gesture, the way Jeremiah tucked the rag into his apron, the way he leaned forward with concern, was met with an unsettling, intent stare. Jeremiah had no idea, but that stranger's gaze carried more weight than the gossip in the booth ever could. Outside, the rain tapped harder against the window, like the night itself was trying to warn him. Jeremiah rubbed his tired eyes, not realizing he had just stepped into a chapter that would change his life forever. By morning, pale light spilled. Through the fogged-up diner windows, smeared with streaks of dust, Jeremiah hadn't had time to wipe. The tables sat mostly empty. Only 2 regulars lingered over their coffee, their voices carrying farther than they thought. "Poor man's too soft," one muttered, spoon clinking against his cup. "Soft?" the other scoffed. "It's stupidity. You don't give away food when you can't even pay rent." They chuckled, shaking their heads, treating Jeremiah like a living cautionary tale. He pretended not to hear. Instead, he moved calmly behind the counter, refilling salt shakers, straightening napkin holders, anything to keep his hands busy. His apron was frayed, a thin line of sweat cut across his brow despite the morning chill. But no matter how he masked it, their words weighed heavier than the stack of overdue bills waiting in the office drawer. By mid-afternoon, the bell over the door jingled. The stranger was back. Same ragged coat, same quiet shuffle. Jeremiah glanced up from the grill and nodded toward a booth without hesitation. "You again," he said softly, sliding a plate of eggs and toast across. "Eat. No arguments." The man's hands trembled as he gripped the fork. He barely spoke, barely moved, except for his eyes. They never left Jeremiah. They followed him as he wiped counters, greeted the rare customer, and checked the old clock. Above the door, as if the stranger was measuring every second that passed, word spread quickly around the neighborhood. What once looked like kindness now looked like weakness. Suppliers began cutting him off. A delivery truck never arrived, and when Jeremiah called, the driver's voice was sharp. "Pay what you owe first." That evening, Jeremiah stepped outside to toss the trash. Two neighbors leaned against a lamppost, their words cutting sharper than the cold air. "Man's drowning himself," one muttered. "Don't pity him," the other replied. He chose. "This, you can't feed everyone." Jeremiah froze, trash bag in hand, their voices echoing in his head. For a flicker of a moment, doubt clawed at him. Were they right? Was he truly foolish? But then he pictured the faces of the tired mothers, the hungry children, the silent man inside, eating as though it was the first real meal in days, and the doubt slipped away like a shadow at dusk. Back inside, the diner lights buzzed faintly. Jeremiah leaned against the counter, his face worn with exhaustion he could no longer hide. He didn't see it, but the stranger's eyes softened, as though he recognized something rare in Jeremiah's quiet suffering. The whispers outside kept growing, but Jeremiah kept showing up every day. And the man kept coming back, silent, watchful, always studying. The week stretched thin, taut like a rope ready to snap. By Tuesday, Jeremiah was scraping together meals from whatever scraps he could find in his pantry. Half a bag of rice, a few wilted onions, a crate of bruised tomatoes he'd managed to buy cheap from a sympathetic vendor. He stirred pots with heavy hands, masking the tightness in his chest each time his thoughts drifted to the ledger locked away in his drawer. Thursday morning, the mail arrived. A thick envelope, its bold red stamp screaming louder than words. Jeremiah sat at the counter, thumb tracing the edge of the seal, heart pounding so hard he thought the regulars might hear it. He didn't need to open it. Deep down, he already knew. But when he tore it apart, the truth carved into him like a knife for closure. Unless the debt was paid in full, the diner would be seized in days. That evening, the diner was quieter than ever. The hum of the old refrigerator, the scrape of the stranger's spoon against a chipped bowl, those were the only sounds. Jeremiah sat across from him this time, both men silent, both drained. For a flicker of a moment, Jeremiah thought the man might finally speak. But instead, there was only that same steady, unreadable stare. The next morning they arrived. Two uniformed officers pushed through the door, crisp papers in hand. Behind them, a man in a suit carried a clipboard, eyes scanning the diner like a vulture circling carrion. "Mr. Cole?" one officer asked. Jeremiah nodded, his throat dry as sand. Their voices were flat, official, merciless. The diner was being repossessed. He had until the end of the day to leave. The few customers in the booths froze. Then the whispers started, slithering through the room. "Told you he couldn't last!" All that free food finally caught up. To him, Jeremiah gripped the counter so tightly his knuckles turned white. He could feel every eye stabbing into his back, every word cutting deep. But he didn't argue. There was nothing left to say. And then, tires screeched outside. Slow, deliberate, almost theatrical. A line of black SUVs pulled up to the curb, engines humming like predators waiting to strike. Heads turned. Conversations died. Even the officers stiffened, uncertain. The diner door swung open. From the lead SUV stepped the man everyone thought they knew, the same one who had shuffled in night after night, hidden beneath a ragged coat. Only this time that coat was gone. In its place, an immaculate tailored suit sharp as glass in the morning sun. His beard neatly trimmed, his posture tall, powerful. Assistants followed, their arms burdened with thick folders and sleek briefcases. The diner went silent. Forks hovered mid-air. Even the refrigerator's hum seemed to fade. The man walked forward, each step echoing across the worn floorboards like a gavel striking. His gaze never wavered from Jeremiah. Jeremiah's chest heaved, breath shallow, as the truth began to form. The stranger wasn't who he seemed, and the revelation about to be spoken would shatter every assumption in that room. The rag Jeremiah always carried slipped from his hand, landing on the floor with a soft thud. The man in the suit stopped just a foot away. The man studied Jeremiah's face for a long, charged moment. Then, without a word, he placed a thick folder on the counter between them. His voice, when it came, was calm, steady, but it carried an authority that silenced the entire room. "Mr. Cole, these are the deeds. This building, this diner, it's yours now, paid in full, every debt cleared." Gasps rippled through the booths. Customers leaned forward, eyes wide. The officers shifted uncomfortably, suddenly unsure if they were even. "Needed any more?" Jeremiah blinked, trying to process the words. He shook his head as though refusing to believe what his ears had heard. I don't understand." The man straightened his shoulders, his tone firm but filled with something almost gentle. "You fed me when I had nothing. You gave without asking questions, without judgment, again and again, even when it nearly broke you. I wanted to know if that was who you really were, or just habit, so I disguised myself." He glanced down almost with a trace of shame, as if remembering the ragged coat. "I tested you, and Jeremiah, you passed in ways I never expected." A murmur swept through the diner. The very neighbors who mocked Jeremiah just days ago now sat frozen, some faces flushed with shame, others wide-eyed with awe. The man continued, his voice carrying weight across the silent room. "I'm investing in this neighborhood, and I've been watching you longer than you realize. You're not just a diner owner, Jeremiah. You're its heartbeat. Men like you don't deserve to sink. They deserve to rise." He slid the folder closer. "Not only is this diner yours, free and clear, but I want you to expand, build more, spread your vision. If you let me, I'll back you every step." Jeremiah's throat tightened. His hands hovered over the folder, trembling as though afraid it might vanish if he touched it. Around him, the whispers had shifted, no longer mocking but reverent. "Can you believe it?" one voice gasped. "He was right all along. Kindness really does come back." Tears welled in Jeremiah's eyes. He tried to blink them away, but one slipped free. He pressed his palm against the folder, grounding himself in the reality that this wasn't a dream. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds, striking the cracked neon sign above the diner door. And for the first time in months, Jeremiah felt its warmth. His life had just changed in ways he could never have imagined. But one thing would remain the same. Tomorrow morning, when those doors opened, anyone hungry would still have a place at his table. Because in the end, that was what had saved him. Jeremiah's kindness nearly cost him everything, but in the end, it became the very reason he was saved. So what do you think? Does true generosity always find its way back? Let us know in the comments. And if this story touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. It helps us bring you more stories that remind us of the power of integrity.